everybody, and welcome back to what is another real big adventure. Now this time, let's just get right into it. And where are we? Well, this time we're going to be going around some of China. And specifically in this video, we're going to be going around the capital of the Sichuan province, Chengdu. So as per usual with these videos, I say I'm gonna get right into it, but actually I'm not gonna get right into it, and I'm gonna start by dropping some history on you folks. But if you guys don't like history or whatever, you can just skip to the timestamp on the screen right now. But you know, if you do love history, or if you just want to hear my beautiful, just ASMR ready voice, oh, then just stick around a little bit longer. All right, let me preface this history lesson real quick by saying I grew up in America, going to American public school for the entirety of my education up until college, and all I can remember about Chinese history is that, well, China is really big. It's over here on the map. It has two really long rivers, and a lot of history that American history teachers couldn't be bothered to teach. However, what I can tell you is that American teachers are very willing to teach all about the same 200 years of American history that I had to learn like 10 times over. And like things like, dude, it's like 15 times, it's like 5 years long. Not even that long ago, the grand scheme of things. And like World War II, like how many times did we learn about World War II? Like we learned about World War I like once. We learned about World War II like 20 times. We did start watching videos about World War II, and like, dude, and like the first grade, like what the heck? Like I understand like what's wrong with world history education. Like 1 year, like 10 years, Virginia State history. Anyway, it's learning time now, folks. All right, so Chengdu has a very, very storied history, but it may be most notable in history for being the capital of the Shu-Han Empire during the Three Kingdoms period. So following this period of time, which was a long time ago, all the way up until more or less modern history, Chengdu has always been there and has always been sort of the capital of whatever people were around there. It was a bunch of different kinds of kingdoms, maybe some empires here and there, this, that, and the other. There's a long time, and there's a lot of people that were there, and I'm not going to explain any of that in this video, just like my American history teachers, mainly because, probably just like them, I have no idea who they were. I could do the research, but I'm not going to be bothered. Anyway, in modern day history, Chengdu was most recently used as the capital, I believe, for the government of what we now call Taiwan, before Taiwan moved to Taiwan. Another very important aspect to Chengdu in the past is the fertility of the land surrounding the city in the aptly named Chengdu Plains, and that leads the plains and the surrounding area to be referred to as the country of heaven and the land of abundance. So this ability to grow food is why the city has been so historically significant for all the empires over there and kingdoms over there, because the ability to grow food was crucial for people back then during times of war, and is also still crucial today for growing food in China, because if you just go outside of the city a little bit, you will see farms everywhere and people just growing a ton of food. And so this brings us into modern day Chengdu, which is considered one of the most important economic, financial, commercial, and research centers in China. It is also home to around 20 million people, which makes its population well over double the size of New York City, almost triple the size of New York City, but this only places it fourth on the largest cities in China, which kind of gives you a little bit of a scale for how big the mega cities in China really are and how crowded and populated they are as well. Apparently, it's also considered the gay capital of modern day China. I didn't really see anything to indicate that during my time there, but you know, I also wasn't really looking for that, so maybe I should have kept my peepers open. But yeah, I'm just gonna leave that there. Yeah. All right, so I'm gonna wrap up the history here. I know I didn't actually talk about much history whatsoever now that I look back at it, but I know it doesn't really matter. All that you need to know is that Chengdu is really, really old, and because of that, there's a lot of really old places that you can go see. All right, let's get right into the adventure now. So we spent a total of 6 days in Chengdu, but we actually spent 3 of those days doing day trips to nearby scenic and historic spots, which I'll save for a later video because I think this video is gonna be way too long if I include all those. And so this video will be focused exclusively on the 3 days spent within the city itself. Like many other cities in China, Chengdu is huge and full of ancient places, important cultural landmarks, religious buildings, and modern large-scale buildings as well. Let's begin our trip by looking at some historically important landmarks, starting with the Wuhou Shrine. So this shrine is considered to be one of the most important Three Kingdoms relics left behind in our world. So this shrine actually has an absolute ton of history, and it can be a little bit hard to wrap your head around what you're seeing and the significance of what you're seeing while you're there, especially if you do not do your research before going to the shrine, like I did, and have no idea what you're looking at, like I did, because none of the signs are in English, and if they are in English, they are of absolutely no help whatsoever. So to keep this video short, and at any kind of respectable length for that matter, I'm going to keep this extremely long history very, very short. Alright, so the story of this place more or less goes like this, 100%, there's no exaggerations here whatsoever. But there was a dude named Liu Bei, and this dude, Liu Bei, he was like, dude, I love fighting, I live for fighting, I love nothing more than fighting. And then anybody who doesn't like me, I'ma fight him. So more or less, he went around here and he was like, do you like me? And if they said no, he fought him. And then he probably just killed everybody who said no, and then he said, this is now my kingdom. And he said, which city is really good in this area? Chengdu's really good in this area. That's my capital. All right, cool. So the thing is, he couldn't have done this all by himself, right? So alongside him was this dude who was really smart and was really good at telling him how to fight. But he wasn't so good at fighting himself. But because he was really smart, he probably knew how to run a kingdom pretty well. So they decided, you know what? You're gonna be the imperial chancellor of this kingdom, which is more or less the same thing as the modern day prime minister. Alright, then a few years later, Liu Bei decided, I'm just gonna die now. And they said, okay, let's bury him in his favorite city. So then they built a temple next to him, which was tradition back then for important folks in China, and said, okay, cool, that's cool. And then another few years later, this dude also decided to die. And then the Chinese said, okay, well, he was also really important, so we'll throw him here as well, and we'll just make his own hall over here as well. And then they ended up connecting everything and said, wow, here we go, shrine, bam, awesome. It was then destroyed at some point, and then, you know, in the 1600s, the dynasty at the time was like, you know what, that guy, both those guys, they were kind of cool guys. Let's rebuild this place. And then here it is today. All right, the end. But no, if you really have time to read up about the history of this place, you probably should before visiting and looking at the map and everything. It's a massive place, and without really understanding why buildings are where they are, or what they were used for, or what they're used for today, you probably won't enjoy it as much. It'll just look like any other old Chinese place. But yeah, it's apparently very, very cool. All right. Let's continue our tour of ancient places in Chengdu, and next up on the list is this dude's house. So bro's name is Dufu, I believe, but I call him Tofu because it sounds kind of similar, right? It's easier to pronounce and it's funny. And most importantly, it's funny. Anyway, this dude was a poet during the Tang Dynasty who wrote about 1,500 poems, I believe, overall, if not even more. It's like 1,500 that they know of nowadays. And he is referred to as the Shakespeare of China. You'd imagine that somebody with this level of fame and literary ability would be all over my literature textbooks growing up. And you're exactly right, which is exactly why I've heard about this dude exactly 0 times before coming to Chengdu. However, I'm sure you'll be glad to know that I read Romeo and Juliet about 6 times a year growing up in high school English class. And it was just great. It was great. The Western education is just so good and covers every single point of important Anyway, my guy Tofu wasn't actually born in Chengdu or even in Sichuan at all, but during a period of war, bro ran over from wherever to Chengdu and lived here for about 5 years in a famous thatched roof house. So the original house is of course gone, but a rough recreation of it still stands in this area, which is exactly where it should have been, along with all the nature that surrounds it. So more than just his house, the etchings of his poems are all throughout the walls and other kinds of beautiful gardens. I absolutely cannot read or understand any of the poems, and I bet if you do translate them, they probably make absolutely no sense. I think they're actually very, very hard for even native Chinese speakers to sort of understand what really he was getting at, which is kind of like when we read literature ourselves in English, but I'm sure they're very, very deep and very, very good. Alright, so now we've covered some old, ancient war history. We've covered some old, ancient cultural history. So now let's talk about one thing that is also old and history, and it's actually religious history. So I'm not religious at all, but I found this story of this place to be very interesting, and it's also very, very fun to visit places that are just huge in scale that have to do with other religions that I know very little about. Let's start this section by looking at this symbol right here. And I am willing to bet every single person in this world has seen this symbol at some point in their lives. It is, of course, the yin yang. And so if you really want to know what the yin yang means and why it's important, you can read this really, really long Wikipedia article about it. But for the time being, all we really care about is that the yin yang originally came from the Taoist religion. And this brings us right into our next landmark in Chengdu, the Qingyang Palace. And this is one of the most, if not the most important place for Taoists today. But why? So let's look into the history of Taoism and the Qingyang Palace itself. So to really understand why the location itself is important, we need to first understand how Taoism came to be. So Taoism can first be traced back to the 4th century BC, and it was supposedly created by this dude, Lao Tzu. Now, I do have to make it clear that it is disputed if this dude was actually real or not, but for the sake of this place and story, let's say he did. So as with most stories in this video, I'm going to be providing an extremely abridged, short version of Taoism's history. So the story begins with my guy Lao Tzu going from east to west China. And at the time of these two places were two different states, with the Hanggu Pass being the main fortified border along the mountains. Alright, so the legend goes that my guy determined that the world was so corrupt and pretty much beyond saving. Dude, this dude was done. He said, I'm not staying here anymore. And he went over west, and then he reached the pass. And the gatekeeper here, named Yin Shi, was like, "You shall not pass!" But then he said, oh wait, I know you. You're the Taoism guy. Alright, don't ask me how he knew he was the Taoism guy, but he said, you're the Taoism guy. And the only guy in the world that knows Taoism. If you go missing, brother, Taoism's gonna be gone. So you should probably like write it down somewhere, you know, write it down so maybe I can read it or something like that. Lao Tzu then goes, you know, that's actually a pretty good idea. So he sits down in the pass. Man hasn't even crossed the border. He's sitting at border control. He's sitting at customs, and he's gonna sit here, and for however long he sits there for, he starts writing down the most important Taoist scripture. Alright, so now this is where stories of the origins of Taoism begin to split. So some stories say that after writing the scripture, Lao Tzu hands it to Yin Shi and then just vanishes into the West. Man stamps his passport and says, welcome into the West, buddy. And then they couldn't find him ever again. But other scriptures, such as the one at the palace here, at the Qingyang Palace here, says that after writing the scripture, Lao Tzu told the gatekeeper that he needed needs some more time to think about the world. And he says, brother, come meet me in Chengdu in exactly 1,000 days. All right, so he then gets on the back of a black sheep and rides it to the modern day location of Qingyang Palace to teach about Taoism. And this officially starts the spread of Taoism, making Qingyang Palace the place of origin of Taoism. So what you choose to believe is up to you, but what isn't up for debate is how amazingly beautiful this place is. The place is still currently used as a religious site for Taoism, making it one of the oldest continually used religious locations in our world. So the main part of this temple is the Hall of Three Purities, where the main Taoist icons reside. On the 1st and 15th of every lunar month, Taoist monks will ring the main bell here. So if you get lucky, you might be able to see that. Further, you will see that there are some goat statues right over here. So it is said if you're hurting, if you're having these aching back pains, knee pains, whatever pains on your body, you should rub the goat in the same spot and it'll heal you. So this is the only temple I'm going to go ahead and include in this video, but there are a lot of other religious sites through the city, not just with Taoism, of course. There are many Buddhist locations as well, with these kinds of monasteries and temples that I'm just going to put on the screen now. Alright, let's move away from talking about old places like temples and stuff, and let's talk about something else that's very old. And I'm talking about a very old species. And I'm talking about a very Chinese species. I'm talking about none other than the giant panda, baby. You can't just go to Sichuan, you can't just go to Chengdu and not talk about pandas. Now everybody knows that the giant panda has been a very unfortunate victim of the spread of us humans, and that their native habitats have been largely destroyed. However, I was very glad to see that pandas are actually making a comeback despite their still very low numbers. But a big reason for this comeback is because of modern day research into the breeding and biology of pandas in general. And a very large research center, if not the biggest one in the world, is here in Chengdu, and it is called the Chengdu Research Base of Giant Panda Breeding. Like almost everywhere else in China, this place is absolutely massive. Alright, so it is a non-profit research center founded in 1987 that is home to over 200 pandas and red pandas. Anybody can visit, and it does give like kinda zoo-like vibes, but the pandas are absolutely on their own schedule, and they're not there just to be viewed by people. So we went a little bit later in the morning, and all the pandas were just sleeping after finishing their morning meals. You can see they're very cute. We went to the place that had like the baby pandas, and these baby pandas, they learn how to climb, and so they can't get eaten by well, I don't know, nothing's gonna eat them there, but you know, whatever. So they hide up in these trees, and look at these little balls in these trees. Oh my god, oh, that's so cute. Anyway, our guide explained that you know, pandas, all they really do is eat and sleep, and the place is really big. That we only sort of went to this one area, but you can spend the whole day there. We only spent a few hours because, well, how different can pandas really be? I say that, but there is one panda that sticks out, and you may have seen this panda on the internet. So this panda is named Hua Hua, which translates literally to flower, and she is the Mona Lisa of pandas. The line to visit Hua Hua can extend to be several hours, so we didn't bother going. But why is she so liked? Well, apparently she's just a chill dude who likes bamboo, and is also a sexy panda with a perfectly round body and face. She is apparently just the model panda, and she just is apparently so chill that if other pandas are taking her food, well, she just doesn't care. She won't fight back. She'll just take more food. And her I guess, I don't know, her carekeeper, or I don't know what you call a panda keeper, her caregiver, he's also apparently a really chill dude. So the two of them, they've been together for a very long time, I think since she was born, and there's a lot of very cute internet videos of these two, so yeah, give that a view. So it's important to know that this place it can get very crowded. You know, it is still in the city of Chengdu itself, and it's very touristy. It's definitely, you know, pointed to be more of a trip for your family and whatnot. But if you want something to be a little bit, you know, more chill, quieter, I just wanted to see some pandas, bro. I totally get you, because I'm the same way. Which is why you can also go to the Dujiangye Panda Valley. And this place gives much less zoo-like vibes. There are no guides, there are no restaurants, there are nothing but pandas here, and visitors are encouraged to stay very quiet. So this time, we went super early in the morning, and we were able to catch pandas going about their breakfasts. We were also able to find red pandas here. So we got really, really lucky, because these animals are allowed to go wherever they want, whenever they want, inside, outside, whatever they want to do. And nobody really controls their schedules all that tightly. So yeah, but we were able to see them, and so I'm just going to let a bunch of panda footage roll. Alright, let's shift away from these cute little pandas to the thing that the cute little pandas love the most. Let's talk about some food. Alright, so food is probably a big reason why everybody comes to China, right? Food in China remains undefeated. It is so good, and it is so unbelievably diverse, depending on where in the country you are. So remember what I spoke about earlier in the video, right? China is really, really big and has been around for a really, really long time. And it had multiple kingdoms that's been split up in a bunch of various different ways, and a bunch of different areas of this country have developed differently, because moving around such a large amount of space wasn't all that easy until, honestly, fairly recently, right? And so China, each part of China for that matter, has more or less developed a different type of Chinese cuisine. Today, there are 8 major different types of Chinese cuisine, which the Chinese call the Great 8 Traditions. These Great 8 Traditions are Shandong cuisine, Anhui cuisine, Zhejiang cuisine, Jiangsu cuisine, Fujian cuisine, Cantonese cuisine, Hunan cuisine, and of course my favorite and the star of our show today, Sichuan cuisine. So the Sichuan people have a lot of pride in their cuisine and consider Sichuan to be the place of the origin of mala, hot pot, and all other kinds of mala cuisine. And so if you haven't ever had this before, it's very, very spicy. So the origin of this cuisine is very, very simple. It's just that the people working along the Yangtze River used chilies and peppercorns to warm themselves up after being out in the cold or in the water all day. And the idea was, the spicier the food, the hotter they got. So as time went on, Sichuan cuisine evolved with these concepts in mind and has developed into China's spiciest cuisine by far. So other provinces in China do eat very spicy food as well, but Sichuan cuisine is known for its mala properties. And mala more or less just means it's both bitter and spicy, but not bitter in the traditional sense of what we think, but it will make your mouth feel a little bit numb. Which I know as I describe it, it sounds not very appetizing at all, but the idea is this bitterness, it's strange, it makes your body want to go back for more. So no matter how spicy or bitter it is, you keep eating it anyway. And honestly, it works quite well for those who like spicy food. So I consider myself to do pretty well with spice. My spice tolerance is pretty high. But oh my god, the hot pot and other restaurants we went to simply just brought me to my knees. I stood no chance against the gods of spice, the natives of Chengdu. They were putting down this spicy hot pot like it was water. I don't understand how they were doing it. They were just chilling there. They were drinking. They were having a great time. Meanwhile, my face was blood red. You know, we had hot pot about 4 times across our time there, and by the time I was done, or rather it was done with me, I was looking like this. So since stomachs are probably so ravaged by all this spicy oil, peppercorns, and chilies in Sichuan cuisine, a very popular activity in Sichuan is to just go for afternoon tea. So all the tea in afternoon tea is very, very herbal tea, and it is known in Chinese medicine to be able to cool down the body. And you can see the popularity of afternoon tea in places such as the People's Park, where one of the oldest and most famous tea houses is. So we went there, and you're seeing footage of it now. There is not so much as a single empty seat, much less an empty table at this tea house. And it was just a random weekday as well. So I don't know what was going on, but the stereotype among Chinese people is that the people of Sichuan are very, very laid back and don't really take their lives as seriously as other places in China, which I very, very much so like. So anyway, we were able to sit down at another place in the park, and we had some tea and some crackers and whatnot, and honestly, it was just incredible. Outside of these sit-down hot pot or other Sichuan cuisine restaurants that I've been showing you in these time lapses, there are many options for cuisine here in Chengdu as well, and these are more outdoor night market kind of places. There are just famous food streets where you can buy souvenirs, food, traditional eats, other small kinds of eats, and just walk around all night. And of course, if you do still want hot pot and whatnot, you can get that there too as well. There are so many famous food streets and other night markets, and I'm gonna go ahead and leave footage along with their names on the screen now. Alright, so I never recorded an outro when I was doing the voiceover for this video. I have no idea why. But the video's over. However, the trip in China is not. There is still a lot to cover. Not just the day trips I mentioned, but a bunch of other cities that we went to. And so I'll push them out when I get a chance. But you know what? There's other real big adventures coming up as well. And there's only one thing I gotta say to that. Let's go!